Jim Trusty on all of this, a former DOJ prosecutor. Jim, we're learning separately, and I do want to get into the leaker issue here, but that Senators Sanders and Gillibrand and Warren have immediately called for, abolishing the filibuster to get legislation that would enshrine the protections of Roe v. Wade. Now, I know that's more of a political issue here, whether they could succeed in doing that. But in other words, to preempt whatever decision the Supreme Court comes down with, later this year, that would be time a waste in there. How doable is that?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, look, to me, it's a really disgraceful moment that anyone is wallowing in political exploitation, which is what you're really seeing, and avoiding an issue that actually should unite all of us. So we should be talking about how outrageous a breach this is of the ethics of the Supreme Court. And it got about a minute's play, and then it turned into this idea of, let's use it to abolish the filibuster, or let's rant and rave and get emotional about abortion. So I don't need to add my voice to the emotionality. I think we should all be focusing on what a horrible breach this is. And by the way, in terms of congressmen coming together and passing laws to protect the Supreme Court, how about also passing a clear federal law that protects the intellectual property of the Supreme Court? Because we're kind of struggling to find a criminal offense here, and it would be nice to have something that basically says if you engage in the unauthorized disclosure of the work product of the Supreme Court, that you face a serious felony for that.
But for the time being, even if we catch the person who leaked this, no such punishment may be short of potentially losing his or her job.
Yeah, but if they had the right people investigating, and you and I talked the other day about how the marshals, parts of the U.S. Marshal Service are very adept at investigating, like the electronic surveillance guys are fabulous at tracking down fugitives, international or national. They know how to use technology. This is going to be an investigation that's based on people and technology. People in terms of interviewing folks in the building and saying, hey, is there somebody that's been running their mouth, that's somebody that's an ideologue about Roe versus Wade, or that's had tipped off that they might do something like this, or maybe someone actually steps up and confesses. But beyond that, you've got a lot of access to technology. You've got government computers with nice big banners that say it's not your property, probably have government issued phones. These are easy things to scoop up and search for connections to Politico and search for documents that show that these folks, whoever it is, made the disclosure. So I'm optimistic with the right people investigating, it's a quick and easy leak investigation.
Now, is it something that would be picked up by cameras in offices at the Supreme Court? In other words, is someone who is copying something, relaying something, or is it much harder than that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about the security measures within the Supreme Court. Hopefully none of us know on the outside about that. But it's certainly conceivable. I mean, really what you're looking at is how sophisticated was the leaker? Is this someone who literally just sends an email to Josh Gerstein at Politico? Or is it somebody who realizes that they don't want to leave an electronic paper trail or a video paper trail and does something that's much more like espionage, the drop-off in the city park kind of thing? I'm optimistic, though, that one way or another, through technology in particular, and someone that's capable of being this much of an ideologue should be kind of proud to announce their misdeed. But there's one other thing just to keep in mind, Neil. We don't really know where it's coming from, and that means the investigators shouldn't eliminate anybody prematurely. If there's an associate justice that's involved in this, that authorized a clerk, for instance, to do it, there needs to be serious consequences all the way up to that.
You think that's possible?
It's certainly possible. I hope not. I mean, it would make a dark day even darker in terms of the Supreme Court. But, at this point, I don't think anybody should rule anything out. Again, most importantly, the investigators shouldn't rule it out.
Amazing. Jim, thank you very much. Jim Trusty, following all of these developments here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.